Everybody, welcome back to the Energy MD podcast, where we help you resolve your long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome naturally so that you can get back to living your best life. So, I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking with Ashley James about anxiety. And before you click away, you may think that you don't have anxiety, but pay attention to the way that she defines it because it's very possible that you do. And most people who do have had medical diagnoses and are going through medical issues have some degree of anxiety. And she's got a really great technique that she incorporates to resolve it quickly. And we're going to go into some practical stuff around that. So let's learn a little bit about Ashley. So Ashley James is a holistic health coach, podcaster, rapid anxiety cessation expert, and passionate whole food, plant-based home chef who's been helping clients transform their lives since 2005. A master practitioner and trainer of neurolinguistic programming, she combines powerful mind-body tools with deeply researched holistic protocols to create lasting change. After reversing her own type 2 diabetes, PCOS, infertility, chronic infections, and debilitating adrenal fatigue, it was so debilitating I can't pronounce it, Ashley founded the Learn True Health with Ashley James podcast in 2016 to share what truly works. Her mission is to show you that you do not have to suffer and that your body can heal when you remove what harms it and give it what it needs. Ashley, thanks so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you mentioned before we jumped on that you had your own story of chronic fatigue. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I was really sick as a kid, just like sickly, until my mom took me to a naturopathic physician when I was 6 years old, and he looked in my eyes and my ears and my throat and took my blood and said, "You're allergic to milk, yeast, wheat, and sugar. Stay away from them." And I remember coming home and my mom threw everything out of the cupboards, and we ate more of what you would now call a paleo or like the O blood type diet, where it was whole foods. There was meat, there was eggs, there was limited grains, lots of vegetables, both raw and cooked. And overnight, my health completely took a 180 in the positive direction. All my sore throats went away, all that like fatigue went away, and I was an energetic kid for the first time, like just feeling good. Um, then when I was 13, I rebelled against all of it, as we often do. I ate, like snuck a bunch of Halloween candy and just started eating cafeteria food at my school. All the junky kind that I knew wasn't good for me, but all my friends got to have it and gave lots of good dopamine hits to eat all that fried food and sugar and everything I wasn't allowed to have. And I
Right.
proceeded to give myself infection after infection. This was the first time ever in my life I was on antibiotics, was when I was 13. And for about 6 months, I was just sick from all the food I was consuming. And then I gave myself type 2 diabetes. And later on in my 20s, I developed chronic infections that I was on constant antibiotics for.
Mm.
Um, I still rebelling with my diet. And it just took me a really long time to realize my mom was right, which is a hard pill to swallow. But now that I'm 46 and a mom, I realize how much my mom was right.
Mm.
And so yeah, so I spent most of my 20s really sick. I developed chronic adrenal fatigue that was confirmed with not only blood work, but that like 24-hour spit test, where my cortisol was shown to be almost non-existent. And my doctor was like, she was a functional doctor. She's like, "How are you even standing?" And that was really affirming for me because everyone just was kind of like, "You're just lazy, just go to the gym." I'm like, if I go to the gym, I can't move for a week. Like
Right.
I couldn't process human language in the morning. Like I was completely drained. And so I finally found this, and this was really a godsend, this functional doctor back in 2008 who also had overcome chronic adrenal fatigue because she was in the Olympics twice. And so she gave me some good guidance. And then my husband and I were watching, and this is, I'm going to date myself, but back when Netflix first started streaming, instead of having to like have Netflix send you DVDs, we
Right.
could watch it online. And they had some really interesting food ones like Food Inc. and Forks Over Knives. And we remember in one of these documentaries, the original CEO of Whole Foods had a speech, and he said, "Shop the perimeter of the grocery store and eat organic." And we thought, well, that's a new Whole Foods open up down the street. We could try that. So we shopped the perimeter of the grocery store. So we gave up all processed food. I was still doing dairy at the time, although I knew from my childhood that my body didn't agree with dairy. I was still doing dairy, but I gave up all the sugar and the flour and the processed food, and we ate organic. And within 1 week, all my chronic infections went away.
Mm,
And I still felt like crap. I still had chronic adrenal fatigue and type 2 diabetes. And I also didn't mention, I also had PCOS and I was infertile. I didn't have a cycle. And I was told I'd never have kids by an endocrinologist after a battery of tests. And so here I am in my late 20s, making this one food choice and having one of my health problems go away. And I thought, if I can make if I can make a food change and one problem drop off within a week, what else can I change? And so I began just deeply seeking. I think I had at one point kind of just given up and like given up seeking, right? Because every doctor had just drugs and not answers.
hmm
So I began seeking more and more. And that's how I found my mentor, who's a naturopathic physician, who showed me what I could do with minerals, supplemental minerals and herbs and Chinese medicine and nutrition. And I was able to reverse all of those conditions, which was amazing. Having chronic adrenal fatigue finally leave my body, it was like the light bulb was finally coming back on, and it was amazing. And of course, it was over a period of time, but it was fast enough to notice a difference. And that's when I changed careers. I was like, I have to get this information out there to people. So that's why I started my podcast so that I could interview experts in the field that are going to share information you're not going to get from your regular medical doctor, that you're not going to get from the mainstream medicine, or that is, funded by the big pharma.
hmm
And so I've been doing my podcast for 10 years now, and I've been doing holistic health coaching for over 13 years. And then the anxiety cessation is something I'm very passionate about because I've been doing that for 20 years now, helping people to rewire the brain so they no longer have anxiety. And to actually, I'm going to teach a technique on the show today that turns off anxiety in the moment.
mm
And that's my first. I have 7 main tools that I teach, and that's the first of the 7. And it's the most powerful experience because some people don't even realize that anxiety is in the background. For some people, it is the air they breathe. It is so ubiquitous with their life that they can't separate themselves from the anxiety. And when I teach you this technique and you turn it off, all of a sudden it's like silent and calm and peaceful and you realize that anxiety was there the whole time. So for some people it's like that. And then for other people, they know they have anxiety and they know it's a problem, and they're trying all the things, that they say to do, right? Like meditate and pray and um, you know, have gratitude journals and don't drink coffee, right? And these are all good ideas. And it's not that they're bad. It's just they don't get to the root cause of turning it off and rewiring the brain to no longer create it as a problem in the first place, which is what I do.
Brilliant. And so let's start off with a definition. So how does somebody know that they have anxiety?
So anxiety is not an emotion like any other emotion. All other emotions you can feel in the past as well as you could in a future made up memory. So when I say a future memory, we all can agree that the future hasn't happened yet, but we can imagine what's happening next Sunday, or imagine what's happening, next Christmas. Like we can make up memories, right? And then you can feel emotions about a fictitious made up event in the future, right? So I could think of something really happy that's going to happen, even if even if I know it's fake, like winning the lottery. Like I could live it in my mind, and I could start to actually feel in my body the feelings of happiness, right? So we can just all agree that there's emotions we can feel about the future, even if obviously the future hasn't happened yet, but there's emotions we can feel about the past. So I could think of a memory that has not been resolved, so an unresolved negative memory where there's sadness. I could think about it and I could start to feel sadness in the now. But that's a memory of the past, right? But we can activate emotions and feel them in the now about past events. We can also do that with positive emotions. Like you can think of something really, really amazing that happened in the past, like a really happy memory. And when you just start to go down inside your body and looking through your own eyes and seeing what you saw and hearing what you heard in that really happy memory, you can start to feel it light up in your neurology. You can start to feel that warmth in your chest. You'll start to smile. Even maybe your cheeks get a little rosy as you relive that positive memory.
Mm.
So emotions can be in the past and in the future, but anxiety cannot be of the past. When an event is complete, we can't recreate that anxiety because it's complete. So I'll give you an example. I can remember being anxious when I was doing my driver's test. You remember your driver's test?
Oh yeah.
Did you have anxiety that day?
I
Did you
I
have any? You
I
didn't?
mean,
Oh
well,
my
I'm sure
gosh.
I'm sure I had some,
You had some? Okay, well,
yeah.
some people are so cocky and confident, but
I
I
was as
was
a teenager.
you were okay. So I was not confident that I would 100% pass. Some people are confident that they're going to pass. And what's worse is I'm Canadian. Not That's not what's worse. What's worse is as a Canadian, I I moved here in my 20s and then I had to redo the written and driver's test, which I think is ridiculous. I had to redo it all in my late 20s. I had been driving for a very long time.
Uh-huh.
And I was so cocky about the written test that I got a few answers wrong because there's differences between Canada and the States, right? So when
Yeah.
I went to do the driving test, which also requires different things, like in Washington State, you have to like back up around a corner, which again, I'm a really
Yeah,
good
that's
driver, but I'm like, I felt more anxiety about my second driving test as a late 20-year-old than I did as like a 15-year-old because I mean you can forgive a 15-year-old for not passing their driving test, but like if I've been driving for over 10 years and then I don't and then I fail it, that would be super embarrassing. So I just remember
right.
having more anxiety about my second test
I'm
to
sure.
get my American driver's license. And so I can think back to that moment and I could remember like, oh yeah, I was so anxious. But look at me, I'm laughing. I don't feel anxious now, right?
Right.
I just feel the emotions of the success. Like I passed with flying colors, by the way. And I can feel those emotions. Anxiety is not an emotion we feel about the past, but all other negative emotions you can because we can have unresolved negative emotions. So
Hmm.
anxiety is very different. It's its own category. And that is because it is the signal from our brain to tell us that we're in the stress response. You see, stress is not an emotion. And this is really, it sounds really simple, but it's very profound. I've had a lot of clients who I'll give them homework that is like neurologically science-based homework to help lower stress levels, and they don't do it. They don't do the homework. They'll do all the other homework give them, but then they kind of like are like, well, I don't feel stressed. Like, why do I have to do this homework? I don't feel stress. And I'm like, thank you for acknowledging that. Stress is not an emotion. You don't, unless you're like incredibly aware of your body. Like, are you aware of how many beats per minute you're having? Are you aware of your heart rate variability? Are you aware of, can you feel your heart rate variability? Can you feel like how many breaths you're taking? Can you feel, whether you're in your prefrontal cortex or living back in your amygdala? Like, no, we don't, unless you're like super aware of your state.
Hmm.
You don't know how stressed you are. And I mean, that is a blessing and a curse, right? We want the stress response, but we want it in short bursts at specific times. And unfortunately, with all the triggers now in our modern life, it's being falsely triggered almost constantly, especially if we have medical issues. And I remember from chronic adrenal fatigue, there would be times when I had these adrenal dumps and I'd be lying in bed in my 20s, gasping for air. I don't know if you've ever had that experience of like oxygen hunger, where it's like I couldn't breathe enough and my heart was pounding and I felt like I was falling and I felt like I was dying. And I was like super scared. But this is an adrenal dump, right? Like, and now I can look back and know what it was. But at the time, it's a very scary experience. So anytime I would start to feel anything like out of breath or my heart pounding or any kind of physiological shift, I would start to have negative thinking about it. Like, oh no, And I'd start to have a story around it. Oh no, this is happening. Am I dying? Am I having a heart attack? What's going on? I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. Is it getting worse? Oh no, it's getting worse. And I would have this thinking that my body would listen to. And this is part of the whole anxiety model is that the moment you have a sensation in your body and then you start to label it at like a negative, like, oh no, is that a heart attack? Oh no, what if this is does this mean I have to go to the hospital? Does this mean this? Does this mean that? Then your body then takes that. It's like a biofeedback loop. Your body then listens to your thoughts and it ramps up the stress response, which then ramps up more of those physiological sensations, right? And anxiety is going through the roof at this point. And we can actually create our own panic attack
Sure.
based on our cyclical thinking, which is judging the sensations we have. So when it comes to medical anxiety, catching ourselves in that moment when we're starting to have sensations and observing the self-talk we're having about them and shifting our focus of our self-talk towards what we want instead of what we don't want. And I can unpack that later. Um, it will stop that cycle. It will stop that cyclical thinking that then creates a panic attack. It actually creates a high state of physiological stress, which is all rooted in our thinking. So there is a mind body connection because our body is always listening to our mind and our thoughts, and our body cannot tell what's the difference between what's imagined and what's real. You and I can go and watch a really scary movie, and my husband's a great example. Like just the other day, we were watching something a little scary, like Stranger Things or something, and someone jumps out, like a monster jumps out. Like I thought it was very predictable. Like I know the monster's gonna jump out, and my husband literally, he's 6'7". He literally levitates off the couch. Like he just, he jumps, and it's comical because anytime I watch like a zombie movie, I'm laughing. I think it's hilarious, and he just is like he might be looking at his phone or reading a book, but like in the corner of his eye, if a zombie jumps out from the TV, he jumps off the couch like he got electrocuted. He knows he's safe. You
Uh-huh.
know you're safe when you're watching a scary movie. I know I'm safe. Like we know we're safe. Our house is safe. Our doors are locked. Like we know we're safe. But if you and I got hooked up to machines, and my husband too, and we monitored our heart rate and our blood pressure and saw the dilation of our eyes and did a galvanic skin response and just all the machines that could test our our stress levels and our emotions, we would see that our body is going through a stress event as if we were really fighting zombies.
Hmm.
But we know logically it's not real. And that's the problem is that even our thoughts, even if you think, well, what if, oh no, I'm having these weird heart things. What if it's cancer? What if it's this, right? Our body doesn't know that those thoughts are just thoughts. The body thinks it's actually real.
Hmm.
And even just listening to these negative thoughts, the body goes into stress response in order to, survive, right? This is survival. This is they call it fight or flight or freeze, and running away from the bear, right? But our body is listening to these thoughts and our focus. And that's why anxiety is actually a gift. Once you know how to turn it off, it becomes a gift because it is the red light on your internal dashboard to let you know you've entered the stress response. Now, for some
Hmm.
people, they're like, I've had anxiety for 25 years. I'm like, congratulations, you have not exited the stress response. At least now we know where you've been living. You do not have anxiety when you're out of the stress response. You always have your body's in some state of fight or flight. You have activated the amygdala. You have activated the all of the physiological shifts that take place. And there's a spectrum. So we have like on one hand, we have like a 10 out of 10, which is a panic attack. And you might be like the other, there's zero, which is no, we're good. We're on a beach in Hawaii, like sipping coconut juice out of a coconut, right? With a lime. And then a one might be like, I'm worried, they're gonna the grocery store's not gonna have one of the ingredients I need for dinner, right? Like, and it progressively goes up from there. When people come to me to learn this technique, most people are like living at between a 6 and an 8, which is pretty stressed out. But that's when you can say how much anxiety you're having in the moment is is going to be related to how deep into the stress response you are.
The only thing I'm thinking of is kind of like examples from my own life. I actually have a vocal performance. One of my hobbies is singing, and I have a performance where I'm singing a solo in front of a whole bunch of people next week.
Nice.
And the last time that I did this, I forgot the words to the song.
Oh,
And I was
yeah.
singing a solo, and I'm in front of all these people, and I was just kind of making it up. And so
You could be
I
like,
was
and I forgot the words,
pretty
and you could
much, it
just,
was more like dabba dabba, yabba dabba doo, you
it still
know.
sounded good.
But fortunately, the director kind of like shouted some lines at me, and he kind of got, but got me back on
Oh,
track.
yeah.
But I have anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it, and I have anxiety. And my technique has been
Yeah.
to try to not care, to not give a shit, and just be like,
That is so good that you brought that up because that's one of the things people try to do. So it doesn't work though, does it? I mean,
it's
it doesn't, it
it's
makes it so
okay.
you
It's
don't
not great.
spiral. It makes it so you don't, you're like, oh, I just don't care. But it may stop you from spiraling because you like stop thinking about it. So at least you stop focusing on the thinking about bad things that could happen in your future, like imagining yourself doing it again. But it doesn't make it go to zero. It doesn't turn it off.
Right.
So I'm glad you shared that with me because other people can I mean, people can totally relate to that. I'm really
Mhm.
glad that you have something to be anxious about because then I can teach this technique. I would say 99% of the time when I get on someone else's podcast and I teach this technique, people have something they're anxious about. And the other day I had a guy who didn't, but he like does like somatic work. And I'm like, okay, thanks for already processing all your stuff. Like this isn't, I can still teach it, but it's way more fun when the host has something they're anxious about. So, okay, let me just talk a little bit about the stress response
Sure.
because everyone pretty much is aware, like, okay, yeah, fight or flight. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So was so fascinating when I learned this in college when I was in physiology. I took physiology, neurology, pathology, all the ologies, and it was super interesting to learn that. And I'm going to say it like a Canadian, but there's capillaries and there's capillaries. Okay, they're the same thing. Just just got to just take the one you like and keep it. Okay, and these are like if you could imagine the roots of a tree, the tiniest roots are capillaries, and they're so small that only like a single cell goes through at a time, right? So it's like a cube where one cell at a time goes through. They're very small. And what's super interesting, because so they branch down, like they're big arteries, and then they branch down to arterioles, and then they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they're so small that they're able to feed nutrients to like to cell groups, right? And then they collect the toxins and they collect is it CO2? I always get them mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's CO2, right? I always get CO and CO2 mixed up. Anyways, it collects it gives the oxygen, collects the carbon dioxide, and then they branch, they rejoin to become veins, right? They rejoin. So
Mhm.
in these areas of the body, you have to imagine we have 37.2 trillion cells in the body. So you imagine how many, I know it's like wild, right? You can imagine how many capillaries we have or capillaries. Um, Here's the really cool part is that there are little tiny sphincters. A sphincter is a group of muscles. Think of your anus, right? A group of muscles like this around the capillaries, and they can shunt blood. Now think of how many capillaries we have. We have 37.2 trillion cells. So think of how many capillaries we have. They can shunt blood away from certain areas. And shunting doesn't mean complete. It can mean completely shutting off in like Raynaud's disease, where someone like loses the circulation in their hand. But most of us, it means lessening the amount of flow. So the body has this dam system, the most complex dam system in the world, and it can shunt blood away from specific areas towards other areas that need more blood flow. So if you're running away from a bear because you have fight or flight, what don't you need for immediate survival? Now, this is where I get nerdy. I'm a Star Trek fan, and even if you've never seen Star Trek in your life, it doesn't matter. Imagine that there's a starship and they're fighting the Borg, and Captain Picard says, "Divert all energy from unnecessary floors." So let's say there's like the cafeteria. We don't need energy in the cafeteria right now. Divert all the energy to the shields and to the phasers. Okay, this is the stress response. So the body goes, we don't need now what we're calling non-essential. is actually all of our processes for long-term health and healing, for fighting cancer, for staying young, for staying youthful, for having energy, for having fertility, for having healthy hormone levels. All the things that you want in your life get shut off in order to divert energy to run away from the bear. And this is why it's like really hard to sleep at night when you have stress, right? When you have high stress. So again, stress is an emotion, so you don't know if you're in it, but you see the signs of it. It's like you can't see you see the smoke, not the fire, right?
Mhm.
And so you're seeing the signs of it. And that's why I love anxiety, because anxiety is saying it's giving you clarity. It's letting you know, hey, your body's diverting all your energy from non-essential systems, meaning all the systems that are part of your long-term health and healing. That's one of the things that was happening in my body, because I had anxiety my entire childhood. Had anxiety. I was riddled with anxiety. I also had infertility. And when I corrected my anxiety, stuff started to heal, right? Because I got out of stress response. So this is why
Mhm.
it's all connected. So anxiety is beneficial in that it can show us that we're in the state that we don't want to be in. It's not good for our health, right? And I'm going to teach you how to reverse it and correct it, okay? But just knowing, it's like once you feel anxiety, get excited because you're like, yes, okay, my body's in stress response and I could do something about it because you're going to learn a technique I'm about to teach you. So in the stress response, diverting um, all of the non-essentials looks like this. It looks like taking away most of your prefrontal cortex, which is here. This is where you live most of the time. It's where you make decisions, where you think logically, right? Where you think critically, where you can remain calm and and think, weigh options. And that's where you want to make important decisions in your life. Your amygdala here is like they call it the reptilian brain, but it's like you snapping or yelling at your partner, or your kid, or going and buying a pack of cigarettes even though you swore you quit smoking, or you going and getting some alcohol even though you swore you wouldn't. Like, just it's impulse. You don't have impulse control. It's dopamine seeking. It's where we're typically quick to anger, and we're defensive, and we're not making decisions that is good for our long-term health and healing. Okay, so that's the amygdala. But it's good, it's better in survival mode, because if you are in a burning building on the third floor and you have your logic centers of your brain, you might try to strategize as to how to get out of the building and stall. Whereas if you're living in your amygdala, you're just gonna like jump and hope you like land in a bush. And maybe you break a leg, but you live, right?
Mhm.
So it's good to lose. It's good to kind of not have impulse control when we are, because we just have to react when we're in fight or flight, right?
Yep.
But the problem is you're in fight or flight in not great times in your life when you don't need it, right? So we want to get your prefrontal cortex back, which means we have to get you out of stress response. Okay. Another thing which you might know because you think ulcers, right? Well, what does the body do to shunt blood? It shunts blood away from, and I'm sure you've experienced this, everyone has, away from your core, away from, now it doesn't take it away from like your heart, you need that, your lungs, but away from digestion. We don't need to digest when we're running away from a bear. So we might actually void ourselves. So you might have had that experience when you're super stressed out that you throw up and you have diarrhea, or you get constipation because it just stops, it just shuts down. And if you do eat something, like you're not hungry at all, but if you eat something, you feel a rock in your stomach, like you just a knot in your stomach, it just sits there. That's
Mhm.
because your digestion has slowed down, and just it's on like 10% power basically. Um, because you are in stress mode and your body doesn't need to have all that energy going towards digestion. I think there's something like 60% of our energy is taken up in digestion. That's why the body can heal so much more when it's going through a fast, because it doesn't have to like pour all that energy into digestion.
Right.
So it's putting where's that blood going? It's going to your limbs. It's diverting to your limbs so you can again fight or run. So now understanding why, like what it is to be in stress mode. And yeah, you're gonna have a bit of a pounding heart. Maybe you're gonna have sweaty palms. Maybe you're gonna get tunnel vision. These are all things associated with like a panic attack. But fighters, if you've ever been in fighting, that's also fighting mode, right? So that's their go mode, right? So for some people, that's like a positive thing. And for others, it's a negative, and also do with your focus, what you say to yourself, your self-talk around the physiological experience of the stress response. So again, anxiety is good because it lets us know we're in the stress response. Now I want to teach you how to turn off anxiety. So there's two things. One is turning it off in the moment, And then I have 6 other tools I teach, where they're incredibly impactful because we get ahead of the curve by rewiring the brain so it doesn't create anxiety in the first place. And then you just have less and less and less anxiety. And then anxiety becomes this like 0.5 out of 10 experience to warn you. And so it just comes on, you're like, oh, I feel a little off. Ah, that's my body telling me I'm in stress mode. Okay, I know what to do. Right. So it doesn't become this overwhelming thing that completely shuts down your brain and your focus. So now you keep your mental clarity, you keep your focus, you keep your physiology calm. So anyways, these tools are incredibly powerful. But I'm going to teach you the first one today. And then if you want to learn more, if you really like it, I'm launching a course. This is the second course I've launched. I've spent the last 8 months working on it, pouring everything that I've done with my clients for the last 20 years into this course.
Wow.
And so listeners can just go to learntruehealth.com and all the information. That's my website and my podcast, learntruehealth.com, and then they can check out the course if they'd like to. But just this one technique alone is enough to turn off anxiety in the moment, and you could keep doing it, and you will get great results. It doesn't necessarily keep it away because that's not the purpose of the technique. But with the rest of the tools, you can also keep it away. So yeah, before we teach the technique, do you have any questions?
I don't. I'm excited to learn it.
Cool. Awesome. I'm excited for you to learn too. And I love that you're a singer. My son also is in a choir and he just wrapped up. Just this weekend, I was the food lady. I fed 34 kids and they did a tour and they went around touring over the weekend to different senior homes
Oh,
and
nice.
singing to them. So it was really cool.
That's
So I
awesome.
love that you do that. Awesome. Okay, Evan. So thinking about I want everyone to follow along, by the way. If you're driving, just maybe, I mean, you can listen, but I want for your first time doing this technique, I'd really like you to be able to close your eyes. So pull over or just, come back to this. Like you can listen, but don't do the technique while you're driving if it's your first time. So, Evan, when you think about your singing event, so what I want everyone to do is think about something they have anxiety about, and just for the purpose of learning this technique, pick an event. And it doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. It could be like, I have a dental appointment in 3 weeks, or like you could pick something you have a little bit of anxiety about. Even though I say that, most people pick the biggest thing anyway, but it's okay. Just pick anything you have anxiety about, but a specific date. Just in order to learn the technique, pick a specific date. Because some people are like have generalized anxiety, and I'll teach in a moment. I'll teach how to work with that too, how to turn that off as well. But Evan, you have a specific event. So this is good. So I want everyone to think of a specific event that when they think about that event that's coming up, they feel some anxiety. They feel something in their body in the now. So Evan, when you think about this singing event coming up, how much anxiety do you have in your body right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being minimal, 10 being the most?
A 4.
Okay, great. So then I want everyone just to do the same thing. Ask themselves how much anxiety they have. Just kind of gauge it on a scale of 1 to 10. And a 4 is great. Any number is fine. It just gives us a kind of a starting point. So, Evan, what I'd like you to do is I'd like everyone to do is I would like you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that your life is like a timeline. You have your past in one direction, you have your future in another. And I want you to float above this timeline. I'd like you to float 15 minutes after the successful completion of the event for which you have anxiety around. And I want you to stay floating, looking down on you in this event 15 minutes after the successful completion of the event for which you had anxiety around. And I want you to ask yourself, where's my anxiety? Is it there? Is it gone now?
It's like a 2, so it's
Great.
less.
Great. So I want you to stay there. Everyone who still has anxiety, I'd like you to stay there. Now, for some people, it was a one and done. Their anxiety is down to 0. They were 15 minutes after the successful completion. It is now completed. They see it. They see that it was a success. Now, what are you doing 15 minutes after something, right? It's very mundane. Maybe you're driving home. Maybe you're celebrating. Maybe you're having a cookie. Like it's just very mundane, right? But it's 15 minutes after the successful completion. So for those who have no anxiety, come back to now, open your eyes, you're done. You can just keep learning. But some people still have anxiety, and this is because sometimes anxiety is there's layered reasons. So, Evan, you're floating 15 minutes after the successful completion, and you're now at a two. I want you to take that two and be aware of it and ask it, what am I anxious of now?
So I think it's still, I'm not like 100% in that moment. I'm still kind of thinking about where I am now and thinking
Okay.
about, I'm still anticipating the event.
Okay, so this is good because sometimes when I say go 15 minutes past the successful completion, sometimes people just go into the negative future and they don't see success.
Mm.
And so what I'd like you to do is remember this is a process of active visualization. We are making this up because imagining a bad future is just as fictitious as imagining a good future. So what we are doing is I'd like you to go 15 minutes or imagine 15 minutes after. What would you be doing 15 minutes after the successful completion of your singing solo?
So it's the end of the performance, and I'm kind of milling around with the people who I sang with, and there's the audience members who are coming up, and everybody's telling me that I did an amazing job.
And where is your anxiety now on a scale of 0 to 10?
It's definitely better. I mean, maybe it's a one.
Okay, no,
There's
good.
like just a
It's okay
remnant.
that there's still some left. It's okay. So I want you to take that one. I want you to ask yourself, what am I anxious of now?
So I'm in that moment, and people are congratulating me, and um, yeah, I'm actually thinking about something else.
Yeah. What's
Yeah,
that? So
at
what is
that
that
point.
one about?
Well, I'm thinking about how this is going to be the last time that I'm singing with this group because I'm moving to Europe in 4 months, and um, so I'm just kind of, and I don't know if that's anxiety or whether it's, there's a little bit of sadness, a little bit of grief.
Yeah,
Um,
you can there can be more than one emotion in a future memory, right?
mhm.
And you identified that there was a one. So there's maybe you identified some discomfort, but is
Yeah,
that one? So I want you just to like get really clear. Is there any anxiety left in this future memory?
no, it's just
Okay.
discomfort. Yeah.
But it's really good to acknowledge that there's other emotions there that for you to work on, for you to process so you can come back to now. So there are some listeners who so you can come back to now, Evan, you can open your eyes when you're ready. And any listener who's at zero, come back to now. For those who still have anxiety, here's what we're going to do. I want you to float above the event and look down on the event. Remember, we're 15 minutes after the successful completion. You don't need to know how it was successful for this to work. So
Uh-huh.
you don't need to know how. You just need to see 15 minutes after the successful completion and gauge how much anxiety you have. If there's any left, even if it's a point 0.5, I want you to stay there. I want you to hold that anxiety and ask it, what am I anxious of now? And when you identify what you're anxious of now, I want you to go into the future 15 minutes after the successful completion of that. For some people, it's two, three, four times. Because sometimes there's layers. And I'll give an example possibly a woman who's overcome breast cancer and she's at her first 5 year scan and she's anxious about the 5 year scan. And so we have her go 15 minutes past the successful completion of that and see that it was great. And then she still has some anxiety. And the question is then, the anxiety, she says, oh, it's because I'm worried about the next scan or the next scan or the next scan. And it's totally individual. I have to ask, how many scans do you need to be convinced that it's gone now? And for her, it might be 25 years. Okay, go. Go 15 minutes after the 25-year anniversary of the successful scans. And then I say, where's your anxiety? She goes, oh, it's at zero. Okay, great. Come back to now. It's everyone's individual in terms of their convincer, right? I interviewed an author who was publishing his second book. He had a lot of anxiety he had more anxiety about the second book than the first book. So I had him go 15 minutes past the successful completion of the launch because he said that was what he was anxious about. And his anxiety went down, but there was still present. It was like from a 6 to a 4 kind of thing. And I said, what are you anxious of now? And he went, all the reviews. And he didn't realize that what he was really worried about wasn't the launch. Like he thought that's what he was worried about, but it was really the how it would be received. And so that's why it's like, do you see that layer that you can't even necessarily see the layer until you get past the first layer?
Mm.
So then we went 15 minutes past the successful completion of all the reviews, which would be 1,000 years from now because of Amazon, right? His book could be, his book could outlive him. And his anxiety went to zero. And then he had this profound realization that he had sort of this imaginary mob of people that didn't like him in his mind that kind of were chasing him in his mind his whole life. And that was very profound. Um, and so if you have anxiety still, find the layer. I had a woman who had to do like weekly presentations, and she hated public speaking, and it for her job, but she had to do them for like 20 years basically for her job, the next 20 years. And I said, okay, go imagine basically every single one of them being successful. She was always successful at it. She just had anxiety around it. And although we can train her nervous system to not have anxiety around it, but for the purpose of turning off. So the reason why we're doing this technique is to turn off the stress response. Because then I told you why you want the stress response turned off. Like you want your critical thinking back, right? You want your digestion back. You want your energy production. You want, your longevity producing enzymes turned back on, like everything. Um, and then we can start doing all the wonderful work, the the neuroscience, the neurological work to support the brain to with the neuroplasticity to change how it behaves so that we don't um create anxiety around future situations in the first place. But first we got to get out of it. So what she had to do was imagine her retirement and seeing her entire career was successful in her mind, like 50 minutes past the successful completion of retirement, and then her anxiety went to zero. And lastly, I'll teach for generalized anxiety because there's some people out there who like, I don't know what I'm anxious about. I just know I'm anxious. I know
Hmm.
I'm always anxious, but I can't pinpoint it. And so I'd like you, and Evan, you can do it too. I'd like everyone to just experience this. I'd like you to go ahead and close your eyes, and I want you to float 15 minutes past the very long and successful completion of your life, whatever that looks like to you. And for me, I'm in heaven. I'm surrounded by God's love, whatever it looks like to you. But it would be like you die peacefully, happily, surrounded by generations of your family who are all happy that you're passing on. You live to be like 125 with no ailments whatsoever, and you were able to live all the purposes you were meant to do. You fulfilled everything, right? It was your life was super cool. And now you're 50 minutes after the successful completion of your life. And that for most people, that is the most peaceful and amazing experience that totally turns off anxiety. I've actually, for the last 20 years, I've only met one person that it didn't turn off their anxiety. That's because they were struggling with their belief, and they said they were like maybe atheist or agnostic, but they were like struggling with what afterlife looks like for them, and so they couldn't imagine it. But I was the one person out of thousands I've worked with that didn't have a visualization of what a successful afterlife would look like. So that turns off anxiety. And why is that? Why does imagining 15 minutes past the successful completion of your life turn off anxiety? And that's because your body is constantly wanting to go protect itself, right? It wants to go into the stress response when you need it. And so what it does is it's always listening to our thoughts and listening to what we're seeing and listening to the movie that we're creating in our mind. And it's like it's your unconscious mind has this hand on the light switch. Like, do I need to turn on stress response now? How about now? How about now? How about now? And the moment you start to imagine something negative, something stressful, the body jumps into that because it wants to protect you. And so your focus and your thoughts and what you think and how you word things. So if I say I don't want to slip and fall, I'm imagining slipping and falling, and my body goes into stress response. Like I see a bunch of ice in front of me. But if I said I want to walk safely to my car and I imagine myself getting to my car safely, I don't trigger the stress response. It seems like the same thing, doesn't it? I want to walk safely to my car. I don't want to slip. Those two statements seem like the same thing, but they're not. One has a focus that has me imagine hurting myself, possibly ending up in the ER because I broke something, right? Like imagining that, boom, I've just triggered the stress response in my body just by imagining that.
Hmm.
And we do that 1,000 times an hour with our thoughts. We do that over and over and over again with our focus and our thinking. Um, So part of the techniques I teach is how to rewire our language we use externally, but also internally, our internal dialogue and our focus to not trigger the stress response. Um, so we're just trying to stay out. As long as we stay out of the stress response, we're good. We're in the good mode. We're in the we're in the health and healing mode. Now you can do things to increase health and healing mode. There's wonderful breathing techniques that are proven to increase heart rate variability. There's all kinds of great things you can do to tonify the nervous system and help you be even deeper in a rest and relaxation and in healing mode, which is great. Anything you can do to lower stress is great, and manage it. But if you are battling against 1,000 negative thoughts an hour, right, and versus 5 minutes of meditation and breathing, like, I'm sorry, but your one negative thought puts you in stress response. Good luck. Good luck with those 5 minutes of breathing. Like, and most people don't even do that. Most people don't even dedicate 5 minutes a day to increasing their relaxation. Do you know what I mean? So most people are in a state of anxiety and don't realize it, and in fight or flight and don't realize it, and are deteriorating the body from the being in that state chronically and don't realize it. But I bet the people who are listening do realize it, because most people who are interested in learning how to decrease anxiety or turn it off know that they're experiencing it. So here's the breakdown of the technique. Then, and this is your homework. The next time you have anxiety, which could be in 5 minutes, it could be 5 days, 5 hours, whenever you wake up to the realization that you're having anxiety, I want you to get excited, because it is a break state for your neurological program. Your neurological program is used to doing a certain pattern. We're going to break the pattern by immediately getting excited. This is going to start to change your neurology. So this is what it looks like. Oh, yes. I'm in anxiety. Awesome. I get to practice the tool Ashley taught me. So just that, and you can listen, fake it till you make it. All right. Just like smile, even though you don't feel like being excited, go, awesome. I'm in anxiety. I get to practice the tool. So you'd like literally say that to yourself. You could say it inside your head if you don't want, like you're on the subway, you don't want people to hear you, whatever, but just go get excited and then practice the tool. And the tool looks like this. Identify what you're anxious about. If you don't know what you're anxious about, then, go 15 minutes after the successful completion of your life. But most people know what they're anxious about. So identify what you're anxious about. How much anxiety are you currently having on a scale of 1 to 10? Go 15 minutes past the successful completion. It has to be successful. Imagine what you're doing now, like float above your body, see yourself. What are you doing 15 minutes after the successful completion? If you have a really hard time, like, uh, feeling the feelings, you can go into your body and look through your own eyes. That's fine too. Um, And if it's at zero, you're done. Most people, I would say more than 50% of people, it's a one and done. They go 15 minutes after successful completion, it turns off the anxiety, and that's it. And then they come back to now and you're done. Um, it would be good to then start to think about what thoughts was I having, what self-talk was I having that triggered that anxiety. And you will probably identify that you were thinking about something in your future not working out. Just remember, imagining something good happening in your future is just as made up as imagining something bad happening in your future. But imagining something bad turns a stress response on, which then makes it more likely that the bad thing will happen, because you are not in a resourceful state to make the good thing happen. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Just like if you, Evan, are in a state of stress, you probably are more likely to forget words to a song than if you're totally, like locked in and you've sung the song 100 times, like you know it. But if you're in your amygdala, you're not in the flow with the music, right? And you're in your head, worried about forgetting the words, right?
Right.
So being outside of the stress response, being in the relaxation mode, being totally just like with the music, um, you're in your prefrontal cortex. You know all the words. Everything is awesome. And there's a flip side of the coin. This is anxiety. This is imagining a bad future. This is the other side of the coin. This is excitement. This is imagining a good future. We all the time are imagining bad because we think we need to imagine bad happening in our future in order to somehow um, figure out strategies for overcoming those things. But here's the thing, we don't prepare, we lament. We don't actually solve problems imagining bad things happening. That doesn't solve a problem. See, what solves it is imagining you having solved the problem and then looking back to see how you did it. Be like, if there's, if there's an earthquake, um, I see my family has survived and we're thriving. And then I look back and go, what did I need to do to thrive and survive an earthquake? Well, we have
Mhm.
to have water, we have to have an emergency plan, we have to have medical supplies, we have to have food supplies, right? Like we have to have a family plan, right? So that creates no anxiety to do that. But what does most people do? Imagine the worst case scenarios and then relive them over and over again. Think about what if the other shoe drops and be like the doubting Thomas, right?
Right.
And live in the tragedy, the future made up imaginary tragedy, live in it. What if we lose a loved one? What if we don't have medicine for little Tommy? Like what, you know, and they're just imagining the trauma and they're not seeing this and they think most people think that they need to think of a bad thing happening in their future in order to survive it, but they're actually putting themselves in an unresourceful state and then not thinking of how to survive it or how to overcome it. So that's why I say if you're in anxiety when you're thinking about your future, it's you're not preparing, you're lamenting. And so you got to see yourself having been successful and then look back to now and go, what did I do to get there? So with this technique, we go 15 minutes after the successful completion. It turns it off. Why? Because we're telling our body we're safe now. And then we can come back to now. We're safe. We're out of the stress response. And now we can do stuff. Now we can prepare. So, Evan, you're practicing your singing every day. You've got like you know what to do, right? You know what to do to remember the words, but seeing yourself be successful in your future keeps you in the resourceful state, which then lines you up and makes you more likely to be successful, the most likely to be successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the purpose of being like looking down, how is that helpful?
Yeah. So there in neurolinguistic programming, there's different viewpoints. When you see yourself, it is a level of dissociation. Um, And like you noticed when you were in that future event, there was like more going on, right? There are more emotions. And did you
Mhm.
go look through your own eyes
I
when you
did.
felt more? Yeah, see, you got more associated.
Uh-huh.
So when we look through our own eyes, we we feel feelings bigger. When we are so like when I'm doing something called the fast phobia model, where we take people with intense phobias and within 45 minutes they no longer have the phobia, we completely blow it out of their nervous system. We do a lot of when I say dissociation, I mean their visualization in their mind is seeing themselves. So it becomes a third person, like you're the fly on the wall, like you see yourself. And so with timeline therapy, which is one of the techniques in timeline therapy created by Tad James, of no relation, although I was mentored by him. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago of very old age, but I worked with him for about 5 years and was on staff with him, and he created timeline therapy and which is phenomenal work, by the way. Timeline therapy and I do it. I'm also a master practitioner trainer of it. Timeline therapy is the process of which we can resolve negative emotions from our past. We can resolve anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, PTSD. It's amazing with like vets. It's really, really successful with vets and limiting decisions, negative beliefs. We can completely resolve those, and then anxiety, and so part of that just dissociative visualization allows you to still feel the anxiety, but not like get so in the future memory that it may be intense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also use different positioning. It actually creates a neurological shift by seeing yourself down in the timeline and seeing yourself depending on what angle. So it can get really interesting. Yeah, change
Awesome.
work. It's rapid change work. It's quantum level change work when you can take someone who's like been suffering from PTSD or phobia and in one session no longer have that problem.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
for people who've heard this, and they want to go deeper with you, where's the best place to send them?
Yeah, learntruehealth.com is my website, and they can get on my newsletter. They can reach out to me if they have questions, support at learntruehealth.com. And then very soon, but probably by the time this gets published, very soon there's going to be a link to be able to sign up for my course, which is called Anxiety Freedom. And what I did differently with my second course, the first time I taught this in an online format, I just was like me kind of talking head at a video that people would then take the tools and learn, and that was good. It was successful. But what I wanted was an experience for people to learn from case studies. And so I took a bunch of clients who agreed to be recorded and share. And so every week I teach between one and two tools, and then they learn them and they practice them, and then they come back the next week and they share how it impacted their life, and then they learn two more tools. And so what's cool about the course, the new course that I'm launching, Anxiety Freedom, is you get to learn the tool, because I do this like talking head thing where I teach the tool. And then you can watch as many of the case studies with real
Mhm.
people. And if you repeat it over and over again, like with different people, it's like you're coming at it at different angles because everyone's different. So it's always taught a little bit differently depending on their specific flavor of problem. But you're going to get it so much deeper by going through and seeing other people learn it and how it impacts their lives. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun to create this program, and so far the beta testers have really liked it. Yeah.
Nice. And then we do have the link to that. That's anxietyfreedom.com, anxietyfreedomtechnique.com.
Yeah, that's and just for all my information, they can go to
Okay.
learntruehealth.com. Yeah.
Okay. And I went to learntruehealth.com and it didn't nothing popped up. And so is it just learn TRUE
Yeah,
health.com?
LEARNTRUEHEALTH.com.
Okay, for some reason it didn't work for me, but we can work that out afterwards. So this has been really wonderful. So appreciate you coming on and sharing this technique with us. And for those of you who, like myself, are really fascinated by this work, definitely check out Ashley's work. I highly recommend it. And if this was helpful for you, please give it a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode. So if you have chronic fatigue, whether it's from long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, go ahead and click the link below to watch my latest masterclass, where I go deep into our four-step process that has helped thousands of others resolve their symptoms naturally. After you watch that video, if you're interested in seeing if we're a good fit to work together, you can then get on a free call with me. All right, thanks so much. I'll see you over there. I hope you learned something on today's podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends and family and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helpful for getting this information out to more people who desperately need it. Sharing all the experts I know and love and the powerful tips I have is one of my absolute favorite things to do. Thanks for being part of my community. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Thanks for listening, and have an amazing day.